makes us feel right. I'm just getting off the train. Damn it, sleeping and work all day. I just wanna kick back and relax my feet.
Law school professors who I adore, passed as well. So y'all just continue to keep folks in your prayers, because it's whether whether a death is related to COVID or not, people are passing and people can't go visit family members. Yeah. So it's a tough go, but
take this virus seriously.
Yeah, wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
I had to go on my live yesterday because I went to go pick up some food, and folks are still not wearing masks. Yeah. So y'all just please, it's impacting our communities. It's devastating our communities. So y'all just, whatever everybody else decides to do, y'all make sure y'all please wear a mask.
For sure. So listen, today we have a special edition of the Sole Purpose Show. I've been waiting. I was going to go into broadcast journalism.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
And your parents made you go
to
engineer.
My parents made me try to be an engineer. So I've been waiting to do this for a special edition, election 2020, Sole Purpose Show. Early voting has already started.
It has started. So absentee ballots are out. Fill them out. Take them down to the supervisor of elections office. Put them in the mail, whatever you want to do, but go ahead and get that in.
Now, we actually don't fashion ourselves as a political show here. We talk about all issues that affect people of color, but in light of what everyone is talking about this week, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about the obvious, the Joe Biden vice president pick. And because Monica and I are not political experts, although we're going to sound like political experts because we've been reading up on this week, we decided to bring in the heavy hitters.
Yes. These are people who are much more engaged and involved in politics, whether they've worked actively on campaigns or they have run for office themselves. And so we can pontificate and opine about what we think. But I think these two people who have joined us today will probably provide more depth and insight into the conversation. So I'm excited to have these two
true
people
subject
on.
matter experts. Who are they, honey?
We have Bermetra Salter-Liggins. How you doing, B?
Woo, woo, doing great.
What's going on? And then we have Representative Edwin Narain. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
They are both business executives and community leaders.
Absolutely.
And have both been very actively involved in actual politics and actual political campaigns as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We're looking forward to some spirited conversation to talk about what everyone else is talking about. So I'm anxious to really kind of jump into it.
Yes, please.
There's so many candidates that former vice president has to choose from, and he did commit early on to selecting a woman candidate, that we figured it would be, as is our way, is to give our viewing audience some color and some background onto who these candidates are, right? Because this is not a personality contest.
Absolutely not.
At the end of the day. So Vice President Joe Biden came out before he even got the nomination and said that if I get nominated, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to choose a woman as my running mate. Was that just a kind of a political maneuver, or does former vice president, like, does he really get the importance of having diversity on the ticket?
Yes, I think it's I think it's both, right? I think it's a political maneuver without a doubt. And then also, let's to think about what he said, you also have to realize how he got to be the nominee, right? And so, this election cycle, very similar to the Republicans in 2016, were having a hard time getting moderates to show themselves to rise to the top, right? And so then they ended up with none of the moderates could break through, lots of conversations about viability. And so, they ended up with obviously Trump, right? I think the Democrats did not want that to happen. Many folks would say our version of not a moderate breaking through would be the Sanders presidency. So I do think that yes, it's both a political maneuver
Mm-hmm.
and also trying to speak to the idea that we want to give, women a voice and not from a platitude perspective, but an actual voice in the White House.
Right.
This isn't the first time we've seen that, right? Going back to Geraldine Ferraro in 1984, the disaster that was Sarah Palin with John McCain, and now whomever this arguably vice presidential candidate would be. So yes, I think it's both.
Uh-oh, Ed. So she touched on it. A woman on the ticket has never won. Has never won. What are your thoughts, man? Why are we doing this?
Well, I mean, Bermetra said everything that needs to be said on this, right? Is
So,
it and I want to step back on something you said earlier, Keith. You said it's not a popularity contest. It's always a popularity contest.
absolutely.
Okay. So, electoral politics are being played for sure. And you have to remember, there are more women in the country than anything else. Women reliably vote, Black women especially. Black women are the most loyal voting bloc to the Democratic Party. And so you have a candidate in Joe Biden who was getting knocked in the primary for being too moderate, for being too old, for making too many gaffes. And so coming out early and saying, I'm going to add a woman to the ticket, well, that's a play to engaging female voters. But you have to remember what happened 4 years ago. The most qualified candidate, period, was rejected for the White House.
Right.
Okay. It just happens that that person happened to be a woman. When you look at Hillary Clinton's resume, and if you made her a man, people would be like, wait a minute, we didn't elect a former senator, former secretary of state, former to this position. And you saw women after Trump was elected take to the streets in 2017. Let's not forget about that. So obviously, by picking a woman, Joe Biden's campaign is hoping to tap into that frustration from 4 years ago. And hopefully, I won't even say hopefully, I know for a fact people are excited about the prospects of a Democratic woman being on the ticket for VP, because let's be honest here, Joe Biden may not do 2 terms. It's very doubtful. And so that means that this person is likely in line to become the next president of the United States.
I also just want to add one thing. I think the Clinton candidacy, particularly in 16, was interesting because we will never know if she was rejected because she was a Clinton
Mm-hmm.
or if she was rejected because she was a woman.
Exactly.
And there's this undertone that it was just about her being a woman. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think if a woman had that same resume and did not have the Clinton baggage, we might have seen something different, but we'll never know the answer to that.
Yeah, and so that you kind of touched on my question based on what Ed said. My question was, in light of how people just rejected Hillary, do you think that a woman on the ticket is that a successful ticket for Biden? Because to your point, Ed, Biden may not do 2 terms, right? God forbid, he may not do 1 term, right? Because he's older. Let's just be honest. And so if you're putting a woman on the ticket, people have to think when you're looking at the VP, can I see this person as president of the United States? And so that, Bermetra kind of touched on it. Was it the notion of we're not ready for a woman to lead this country, or was it the notion that we're not ready for Hillary Clinton to lead the country, irrespective of the fact that she was a woman?
Well, I'll tell you what, when you talk about this next individual, well, the individual that is named as a running mate could very well become our next president. It adds adds more color when you consider that it's how quickly the conversation pivoted to look at all of these qualified African American women
Mm-hmm.
who should be on his short. I mean, it really consumed the conversation, and I really want to talk about why the I want to say the front runner, kind of the person who was in the pole position, had to be Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Had to be
Should-
because
oh, yeah.
for a couple of reasons, right? She had already raised the most money. She stayed in the race. She became the face of the left, right? Bernie Sanders and all of the progressive wing, and so she was the kind of the darling. And then all of a sudden, is it me? It just like people didn't get excited. The public just didn't get like excited. Like, oh man, Biden and Warren, that's the ticket. Like that's the slam dunk.
Yeah.
What happened? I mean, what happened?
I think a couple things happened. One, Elizabeth Warren does not tap into it. Okay, so yeah, she's different than Biden in that she's a progressive, but she also has some things, the same things that hurt Biden hurt her. She's older. She doesn't bring in a younger generation. She's also been in Washington for a long time. And then let's not forget the business community. If I can put my banker hat on for a second,
Absolutely.
the financial and business community, they hate her. They see her as a threat to capitalism. With all of her take on let's take money from really rich people and give it back to social services. So she came with some additional baggage that again was not about her necessarily being a woman. It was about policy and her age and some other things that I think hurt Warren.
Yeah.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit with Elizabeth Warren. If you go back to how she ran her campaign, and the same thing can be said for Kamala Harris, both had an authenticity problem when they were running for president. People couldn't figure out who they were. And whenever you run for office, it is best to be your true self. That could help you, that can hurt you, but at
Right.
least let the public know who you really are. And so there were a lot of people who looked at Elizabeth Warren and was like, wait a minute, are you trying to be Bernie Sanders? And so right away, in trying to attract the far left side of the Democratic Party, people said, I don't really like her. Why would I settle for Bernie Light when I can actually support Bernie Sanders? So if you remember, there was a lot of sniping between the two camps.
Right.
Because it was seen as she adopted a lot of his policy positions rather than actually leading that conversation about where the country should go. Same thing for Kamala,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
you talk about that authenticity issue, and I remember her Instagram post with her like having the beer. She's like, "Gosh
Yes.
darn, we're gonna have a beer," and you're like,
Pass me a beer, honey.
"Just get you a Cabernet." Like you just seem off pass.
okay.
Like, oh,
Right.
it's like I'm uncomfortable watching you do this. Like so, just be yourself, whatever that may be.
That's,
Right.
that's interesting because I was actually, and maybe because I'm not in that younger generation. I thought I liked Elizabeth Warren. I didn't necessarily see her as unauthentic. I saw her more so as just what I would say was a liberal white woman who was running for office, who was honest about the fact that there were some things that she didn't know about. And in terms of race, and like she was the first person, if I remember correctly, that brought up the matter of HBCUs, supporting HBCUs. And you could tell that probably wasn't something that's not her reality, but the fact that she was willing to engage and at least bring it up, I thought to me showed that she was open to learning. So it's interesting that y'all said there was an authenticity problem, but I didn't necessarily.
She strikes me as, I mean, she's definitely one of the smartest people, in the race. Rich resume, good policy experience. I personally would love to see her be chief of staff versus VP. I mean, then she can still yield that influence and all that policy experience, and her being a professor. That will bode well from a chief of staff. I don't know that I see her as the VP or presidential for that matter. Because as Steve said, whoever you see as VP now needs to also be seen as presidential, and I don't know that I get that from her.
Get that from her.
So Ed, you're going to need to give us some additional background on Kamala Harris. You brought up Kamala Harris. First of all, for our viewers, we want to make sure that you know who these individuals are. Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, longtime senator. Kamala Harris, the only other senator who was also a presidential candidate. So we got an opportunity.
That's not just true. There's a couple of them.
There were presidential candidates.
Yeah,
Who are
Klobuchar.
Oh, Klobuchar. I thought she withdrew. No.
No, you talking about who are running? Oh, you're talking about who's buying. Okay, I'm sorry.
Who's still in the conversation?
Okay, I'm sorry.
And Kamala Harris also senator, also a national platform. We got a chance to see a lot of her. Senator from California, an important state, right? But the authenticity problem. Talk about Kamala Harris. What didn't happen for Senator Harris?
So I can be real on this show, right? I'm wearing an Obama
Listen.
Biden t-shirt on purpose this morning. I'm going to keep it very real. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker as Black candidates followed the first Black president of the United States. And the backlash that we saw to Barack Obama's presidency is Donald Trump, manifested completely in his current term. The people that supported him, for some reason, felt like Barack Obama was a divisive figure and race reared its ugly head. And I don't care if Barack Obama reincarnated himself and was running in 2016 against Donald Trump, he wouldn't have won that election either. The country was not going to put two Black presidents back to back. Okay, let's be very clear about that, right?
Okay.
So Cory Booker, great guy, good resume, the whole nine, got no traction because America was not putting another Black man in the White House right behind Obama. And in fact, I dare say we won't see that again until we're probably, if God helps us to get 80, 90 years on this planet, another 40 to 50 years. That's how entrenched race is in this discussion.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, Kamala Harris, great candidate. If you just took the resume and just put it out there and say, would you vote for this person? There's no question about it. But she happens to be Black, and she's a woman. 2 strikes against her. She also ran a campaign that, in some senses was, I'm a moderate, but then depending on who she was talking to, oh no, I'm a liberal. I'm with you. But her record did not jive with the concept of being a far left liberal. And to win a primary, a Democratic primary nowadays, you do have to attach yourself to some policy positions that as a moderate Democrat, you may not agree with, just to be recognized. Yeah. And I think Kamala had that problem. She did not know which Kamala she needed to be in order to be seen, heard, and then voted for. That it's unfortunate because she's brilliant and she's ready.
Yeah.
I find her so intriguing, and Ed said we could keep it real on here. Like, she's smart. Yep. She's a lawyer, and like in the Black community, there's nothing bigger than being a lawyer or a doctor, right? Then she went to an HBCU. She went to Howard. She pledged AKA, and then like the Black people are like, you ain't Black enough, and I'm like, these are y'all's rules. These are y'all's rules, right? Yeah. And they were like, you're not Black enough, and I'm like, I'm so confused because I went to Christian Brothers and Wake Forest, and so I get that, but I'm like, these are y'all's rules, right? I think though she reminds me a lot of when Al Gore ran for president, and that I call it being a radio candidate, and that you turn the dial. And you're whomever the group you're in front of, you're them. And then that leads to people thinking like, well, I don't know who you are, right? Yeah. So what she should have done or could have done better is said, look, I'm a prosecutor. And these are the things that I did as a prosecutor. Let me explain to you, fellow Black Americans, why you want a Black prosecutor in the office. She didn't do that. She was kind of like, I was a prosecutor, but not the way you think. Right. And so it just like, she couldn't, so she had a traction issue within the community. And so then that became a viability issue because if you remember, like with President Obama, we were excited about him, but we did not believe in him until he won Iowa, right? And so we were like, okay, if it's not just us, and that's what's happening with this vice presidential pick, right? We want our voice heard as Black people, but not at the expense of losing to Trump, right? So we're like, pick somebody that is going to speak to our issues, but I don't want to be so self-focused that we pick somebody that is going to, turn us off where we can't be Trump. So Senator Harris is very intriguing because like Ed said, with her resume and her background, she should have been our favorite candidate.
Yeah.
And she just could not get going. Like,
I
and
think,
the same thing's happening. And now they're even talking about her love life. It's like,
yeah.
holy moly, like, and it's just, it's bananas.
And so I was a Kamala Harris fan from jump, right? Because I mean, there's a lot of similarities. Black lawyer, HBCU, AKA Link, all of that. And I recognize the importance of Black prosecutors, right? I think to your point, Bermetra, I don't think this was frustrating for me as someone that supported her in the primary, um, and was buying for. Y'all know how I ride with people. When I ride with you, I ride hard with you. The frustrating part for me is that she did not do enough explanation of her prosecutorial record, which has questions. I say question it, question her record, have her stand up for a record. Y'all question Biden's record, go ahead and question hers. But she didn't put it. When people questioned it, she didn't defend it and say I stand by my decisions, and or there were decisions that I made that in retrospect I may have done something a little different. And someone in our chat room said, meanwhile, Biden was able to skate by with absolutely no identifying policies, which is true. So we're holding some of these women's system standards that we're not even holding, Biden to. And
But let me address that comment that was made in the chat room. We also have to remember that Black people, like, we are the most practical thinking people on the planet. And so this particular Democratic primary, we weren't looking at this from a perspective of like who's the best candidate.
Mm-mm.
It's who's the candidate that we know can beat Trump, because
Liability.
a middle-aged white man from Wisconsin or Ohio is going to be comfortable with that person.
right,
That is how a lot of us approach this decision. So when you look at it, Kamala, like I said, she's a phenomenal candidate. She is the person that I would love to see join the Biden-Harris ticket. From day one, I've said Biden-Harris
me too.
because I think it's a winning ticket.
Yep.
But Joe Biden got selected, especially in the states that had over 30% of an electorate of Black folks, simply because we were thinking practically.
Yeah.
Biden can beat Trump. All the exit polls showed that. Everything showed that. Had Kamala been the nominee, yes, it would have been historical for the country.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to happen.
We didn't want historic. We want
win.
We want to win, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, we don't want to lose by 10 to the number one team in the country and
Exactly.
get the whole victory. We want to win.
Right.
So we're going to listen, before we go to break, I want to make sure that we get the other two prominent African-American names that were kind of early on in the process, because when we come back from break, we're going to explore kind of more of the Johnny come latelys. But U.S. Representative Val Demings hit the scene hard.
Yeah.
And it was right on, obviously, on the heels of her role
In the impeachment
hearing. But then Georgia State Representative Stacey Abrams also became kind of the darling of the what about a Black woman? And I'm not so sure where either of them are at this point. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on Val Demings and Stacey Abrams.
So, I do some of this with Bay News 9, and months ago, I threw Val Demings' name. I think it was like March, February, when they asked me about it. And I said, look, Val Demings is somebody that should be considered. But when you consider that she's only been in Congress for 2 terms now, yes, the impeachment hearings was great, but she's got some things that are hurting her. One, the record as a police officer in this particular climate, as the chief of police, city of Orlando, married to now the mayor of Orange County, who's also a former Orange County sheriff. That's bringing law enforcement with you on this ticket. And I think that's going to bring more questions than answers than this camp needs right now. Val Demings is absolutely a star. I could see her beating DeSantis in 22. Yes, I said
put
it.
it out there.
She could win the nominee and potentially become the first African-American governor of the state of Florida and first woman if she decides to do it. But if you're Joe Biden and his team, you don't pick anybody that you're going to have their record examined over the next couple of months. You need to pick somebody that you can hit the ground with running, and boom, for the next 86 days, you're out there just hitting it hard and hopefully winning this election on November 3rd.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I love Val Demings. I mean, she saw us, she's a Delta, but her law enforcement background is an Achilles heel in this climate. Also, she has not been nationally vetted. She's only been a 2-term congresswoman. And then also, a lot of folks will say she lacks executive experience. She hasn't been a mayor or a governor or run, managed a huge budget. Arguably running the chief of police, she's ran a big department. But so I think that she definitely has raised her national profile as the impeachment manager. Like Ed, I think she's a rock star, and the sky's the limit. I don't think vice president at this time is the right move for her today. The other piece that I will say, and I'll take us into Stacey Abrams, that Val Demings has going for her that Stacey Abrams does not, is Demings is aesthetically what people think a politician looks like. She is fit, she's suited, relaxed hair, like she's exactly what people believe that a politician looks like. Stacey Abrams is the opposite of those things in terms of what people believe a politician looks like.
I'm happy you said that, Bermetra. I'm happy.
That's real, right? Yeah. Right. Yep. The other piece is Stacey Abrams lost. Nobody likes to talk about that, right? So she lost the governor's race. She was a state senator. She, again, hasn't been nationally vetted. The vetting that she did get as a gubernatorial candidate in Georgia, some things came out about her personal finances and things like that. She doesn't have any foreign policy experience. So I think there's some other things that and then Stacey Abrams was the first person who openly basically campaigned. I mean, even when you look at the comments, everyone else is like, I'm humble to be considered. I've got other things to focus on. She's like, I will be a great vice president. So you're like, okay, girl. So I think those are my thoughts on both of those candidates.
So let me ask this question, because both of you all said that you thought, I'm going to flip back to Val Demings. When do we go to break soon?
We're going to break soon.
Maybe, and if we get cut off, then we can answer it after the break. But both of you all noted that Val Demings being the chief of police was an Achilles heel in this climate. And my thought was that it would help her, because if you're talking about police reform, particularly when the other side is saying, Biden wants to defund the police, it's challenging to continue that argument if you have someone as your running mate who used to lead, who is a cop and who used to lead a department with chief of police in a large city. So I think it's interesting that y'all said that in this environment you felt that her role
because they're going to bring out every police brutality case that happened in the city of Orlando under her tenure. And because of that, when Biden wins, I think she'd make a fabulous FBI director, a Homeland Security person.
Good point.
Right. But every little case, Monica, they're going to go and find it and say that was under her leadership, that was under her watch.
Okay. This is why we got y'all on. This is why we got y'all on.
And a big part of the conversation about Val Demings stemmed from her being from Florida. And so this is like, if you pick somebody from a swing state, it's a guarantee. Let's be very, very clear about vice presidential picks and why they are selected. It has nothing to do with them being from swing states. Okay, Val Demings at this point cannot guarantee that Florida's going to get delivered.
That's
so, I mean, when that argument started to come up, I was like, guys, you got to look at this a little bit different. So, she's great. I think I agree with Bermetra wholeheartedly. I think she's in the administration. I can even see Stacey Abrams making it to the administration in some capacity. I'll be honest, my disappointment 2 weeks ago was that Stacey Abrams didn't say, I want to replace John Lewis in Congress.
I thought that was odd.
That's because she thinks she's going to be the vice president. She's like, right. I don't have time for that small stuff.
She would have been a shoo-in for that. And
totally.
I think, for her, it may be that she thinks she's bigger than that. And I don't know, because I don't know her, but it was an opportunity right there. And I'm worried because if she's thinking about running for governor again, this guy Kemp is going to stoop to any level to keep that position that he has. So, I don't know Stacey Abrams, but I do want to see her in elected office again.
I tell you what, I love how our panel of experts have basically shot down all of the first half of the slate of VP candidates. I love it. And when we come back,
Ed said he was Team Harris.
He said he was Team Harris.
I don't hide where I'm at on.
We haven't got to my person yet.
We ain't got her person yet.
So
I
when we
do
come
have a
back from
secret weapon, but that's another.
when we come
conversation.
back from break, we are going to examine the non-African American candidates other than Elizabeth Warren, so that we can get a little background and give our viewers some background on them as well, because they are not out of this conversation. And then obviously we do want to get into the juicy individuals who have surfaced within the last several weeks. We'll come back. We'll see you on the other
We'll
side.
be back after break.
From place to place, gotta be in this party space. Can't wait to see her face.
We're playing your favorite old school. Today's R&B. With a smooth touch of jazz. You're listening to In Touch Radio. Smoothing out your favorite R&B flavors.
What's your flavor? Tell me what's your flavor.
In Touch Radio.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we
All right.
go.
Welcome back. Folks, welcome back to the Soul Purpose Show. Today, special edition, Election 2020. The election season has started. So early voting has started. Ballots are out. We have two special guests with us today. The former state representative Ed Narain, Bermetra, Salter-Liggins, business exec, community leader, both very politically active and very politically astute as well, have been breaking down and giving us the tea on the first half slate of our candidates. We've talked about Elizabeth Warren.
I just so happen to be drinking tea this
See,
That's a huge cup.
It's like a boss.
like
Listen,
a boss cup.
my
That
secretary's
looks like a
boss.
beer mug. You can say it's tea. We know what's really in there, but
Oh,
it's
it's
all right.
tea. It's legit
tea.
tea. It's tea.
During this
It's not
show,
noon yet. There's tea in
Right.
that's right.
During this show,
During this show,
it would be tea. Now at 12:30 when y'all hit us back, I
Okay,
kept
it's
my
not noon
foot
yet.
in
It's
the cup.
not noon yet.
no commitments.
Right.
But we have had some great dialogue talking about Senator Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren. We just talked about Representative Val Demings and also Georgia State Representative Stacey Abrams. I think it's important for us to so that we don't lose sight of there are other non-African American candidates for that former Vice President Joe Biden has to choose from. And they are formidable candidates. One, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer Michigan is a swing state, and she has executive experience. I heard that come up before.
She's a Dem.
She is Democrat, obviously. New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham. I'm not sure New Mexico how they play into the kind of the national conversation, unless one of our experts could share it with us. Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. Illinois, we can have a whole hour talking about Illinois by itself, and then Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin, who from what I understand will be the first openly gay
VP.
VP candidate on a major ticket. So guys, why are we not having more conversation about these candidates?
And they had nothing to say.
Well, I mean, a couple things. When a couple of those names, you have to really be somebody that is dialed in and tuned in to this stuff on a daily basis to even know who some of those ladies are.
Yeah.
And so some of them really, truly struggle with name recognition. I think, you mentioned Illinois. Illinois brings you, pros and cons, right? So I went to high school in Illinois, and I think we had a string of like 4 straight years where governors went to prison. Like 4 straight governors went to prison in Illinois.
Yeah, good point.
Whoa, right? Including, Blagojevich,
Right.
right? Which we could do a whole show on that. But the idea of having a veteran, on the ticket is attractive. She would be the first veteran on the ticket since John McCain. I know for our generation that is not as big of a deal as it is for generations ahead of us. That being having served in the armed forces. But I think most of the ladies that we just mentioned in that string, it's not about experience or resume. It really truly is about name recognition, and I'm not sure what they bring to the table to help Vice President Biden outside of their own, popularity within their respective districts and states. But Ed may have something different to share with that.
Nope, not really. No, I mean, everything B said is pretty accurate, which is why one of those ladies actually is probably still in very serious consideration because, by no means do I say I'm an expert on politics. Yes, I follow it. I've been in it and everything else. But what we have seen for decades with vice presidential picks is it's often the person nobody's looking for. Okay. So with, John McCain, if you would have told me back in 2008 that John McCain was going to select Sarah Palin,
John McCain didn't.
I would have laughed.
Right.
Exactly. So, everybody's like Googling, like, who is Sarah Palin? Because nobody even thought that she was under consideration. No one knew who she was. So it's still a possibility that one of these ladies you just talked about could easily be selected for the Biden camp for reasons that we're not necessarily thinking about. As African Americans, we're a little biased. Yeah. We want to see an African American on the ticket. Black women deserve that opportunity. I've been having some Facebook arguments in the last 24 hours, something I normally don't do, about this very subject. Black women being the most loyal voting bloc of the Democratic Party deserve an opportunity to see someone that looks like them on the ticket. And I'll tell you why that's a scary thing for the GOP. It's scary because any one of the ladies selected, Black women are going to vote for. Okay? Because Trump's on the other side. It's just that simple. But there's a difference between voting for a candidate and working for a candidate. If a Black woman's the vice presidential nominee, when you saw groups like Club 44 set up in 2008, you're going to see a repeat of that where people are going to get excited with the prospect and they're going to work. They're going to grab their husbands and their nephews and cousins and knucklehead family members that don't vote, and they're going to be sitting on the phone making sure that they get out and vote on election day. Yeah. There's a big difference, and that's what they're afraid of. So these other ladies, all qualified, would be great, check off the box for different reasons, but no. If you want to win, you want to win, you pick a Black woman.
And I'll put this out there because I said this, I'm somewhat familiar with, I've heard the governor of Michigan's name before. And my comment was, that's good. That's cool. It's a swing state. It's needed, but Flint still has dirty water. So,
well,
that's legit. That's legit. You're governor of a state.
The other thing I would say about just in general picking a Black woman, and I'm not as emphatic as Ed is on this, is that you get balance, right? So you still get a history-making ticket, and that you have a woman, you have a Black woman, and then you still, for all of the middle of the road, don't rock the boat people, you got this old, white guy, right? So everybody gets what they want, right? in a ticket like that. That's the way I see it. Right?
We're gonna dig deeper in that in the 12:30 hour, but I want to pivot to someone who I love because she's a rattler.
Come on. This is my person.
And she's the mayor named Keisha. And she's Bermetra's sorority sister. I want to pivot to a rattler, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of the ATL. So I was actually very surprised. I love her, right? So a couple of homecomings ago, she was our convocation speaker, and she's bad. I mean, the folks, she plays Beta Alpha, so they say baddest. She is the baddest, and I'm not a Delta, but she's the baddest. I hope y'all don't get mad at me for using that. But
so what is there not to like about Keisha Lance Bottoms, right? Like, okay,
right.
But I've been unclear. I'm buying Lance Bottoms all day.
Listen, but the question that I have for y'all is she came out of, we love her because we know her. But people outside of Atlanta may not necessarily know who she is until here recently when she's gotten all this national attention. what is it about her that makes her, as mayor of a city, a potential viable candidate? Because people are talking about her.
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I mean, again, similar to Representative Demings, she looks like a politician. I mean, let's start there. She's an attorney. She has executive experience, and not executive experience of some state that has 12,000 people. I mean, she's the mayor of Atlanta, which most people would argue is the largest, most cosmopolitan city in the Southeast, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so she's got that going for her. She, serves some terms on city council. She's also, what's really important in politics, she's loyal. She came out for Biden incredibly early.
She did.
Even when he was struggling, she was still Team Biden. There's something to be said for that. In terms of what Ed mentioned, you talk about getting people excited within our Black community. HBCU grad, Link, Delta, Atlanta, and. So there's a lot of her that we as Black people can relate to and be excited about, that we would work for her. The other thing I would say that she's done, something that we haven't even seen other mayors do. When she's had controversy, she's not afraid to make tough decisions. She had the issues that happened with the unrest. She fired her chief of police. She said, "Hey, this is just because you can do something, you shouldn't do something." And then, who doesn't like a fighter? I mean, she is giving it to Governor Kemp. Like, she's not afraid. She speaks her mind. She doesn't mind getting in there and mixing it up. That's what a vice president does a lot of, is goes and takes those punches on behalf of the president, so the president does not have to do that. So I think she has a lot going for her, and she's one of the youngest candidates that's still being considered at 50 years old. So I think that I am so Team KLB.
Listen, I love Harris, but I had to rock my FAMU t-shirt today for the mayor named Keisha in ATL. Ed, what are your thoughts?
I
don't
think
feel pressured, brother. Don't feel pressured at all.
Don't feel pressured.
I'm not there. Yeah, I'm not there. But go ahead.
Oh no, I'm not there either. It has little to do with qualifications or anything like that. I'm thinking like that middle-aged white man from Wisconsin whose vote I need. They're going to wrap the experience thing around her, and whether or not she's had enough experience as the mayor. City council experience, great, but I mean, in a strong mayor form of government, the mayor makes all the calls, and we just haven't seen enough yet, is what people are going to say. There is no doubt her star is on the rise. There's no doubt she's gonna be in that administration. I've had people say HUD, things like that. I could easily see her becoming the nominee instead of Stacey Abrams against Brian Kemp for governor.
Yeah, for sure.
Things like that can happen. And you also have to keep in mind that when you see certain attacks start getting levied against political figures, it's because the GOP on the other side has figured out who's on the way up, and so they start trying to cut them down early. They do a very good job of that, and that's what's happening to Lance Bottoms. But I don't share the same excitement because I don't think she's known enough nationally. Whereas I've got a Kamala Harris who's run for president, who doesn't need to be reintroduced to the country. We know what her warts are, and you mention her name across this country, people know and are gonna turn out for her. With Lance Bottoms, I'm just not sure that same level of excitement that the two of you share is actually felt nationally.
I think Susan Rice has the same challenge, right?
Same problem.
Susan Rice is a formidable person to be considered as vice president, but she's a policy wonk, right?
Yeah.
And again, you have to be the kind of person who watches the Sunday shows and kind of is completely dialed in to even know who Susan Rice is, and then to know what her positives and negatives are. With her policy experience, that comes with both sides of that, and then she is completely attached to the Obama administration, which means she and Vice President Biden already have a good relationship, but they're going to throw Benghazi at her. They're going to throw all kind of things. She's going to have given responsibility for things that she didn't even get to probably weigh in on,
right?
As national security advisor, because she was in. But I mean, she's someone else who definitely is in the conversation, and I think is a serious person to be considered for VP.
Now, do you all think? Because speaking of Susan Rice, do you think there's too much? Because I share the same issue that you have with her being selected because of Benghazi. and because of the amount of hate that people still have for the Obama administration, do you think that kind of leaves her out of one of the top contenders? There's no doubt that she has tremendous foreign policy experience, which I think the VP should have at least touched some of it. But do you think that it's gonna mirror the Obama? People are gonna, when they see Biden, if they see Biden Rice, they'll think Obama all over again. And there are some people, frankly, that just do. Trump has unearthed a lot of folks that did not vote in 2008 for Obama, and twice in 2012. Has unearthed a lot of those people, and they don't like Obama. So if Rice is on the ticket, do you think that's a liability for Biden?
So Biden is largely seen as a product of Obama. Right? All of the old Obama staffers are all in for this Biden campaign because they weren't all in for the Hillary campaign in 2016.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people will argue was a part of the reason why she may have lost. So I don't think that's a detriment because you're going to see a lot of old Obama administration faces pop up throughout the campaign to November. And hopefully after Biden wins in November, they're going to be all over the place. Valerie Jarrett, I'm confusing my women now. Susan Rice, the reason why, and Valerie Jarrett would have been awesome too, by the way.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Susan Rice, the reason why she's very much a contender is because of that familiarity that she has with Biden. Most of the articles that have been leaked out the last couple of weeks talk about the relationship that Joe Biden has with Susan Rice and that Joe Biden has with Susan Rice. And if you think about being in a pressure-packed leadership role, you want your number two to be somebody that unequivocally has your back. And that is understood with Susan Rice being the pick. The problem is, and I wish this weren't the case for Democrats, but you have an excitability issue. And that's what we've really been talking about the last 45 minutes. Who can excite the base and get the vote out? Because we know they're coming for Joe. And I don't think that she does that.
Not only does Susan have an excitability issue, Ed, but she's never been a candidate. Right. So we have no idea. And being a candidate is completely different than being a surrogate. It's different than going on a Sunday show and talking about a specific policy issue. The scrutiny, and then we're going to take her from never been a candidate to the biggest spotlight, and that's in a short period of time, which means it's going to be more intense. Again, I'm not saying that she's not ready for that. I'm saying that's a big leap. That's all I'm saying. That I mean, she has not even run for city council or anything. Like she's never been a candidate. Period.
Yeah, you want to move to the next
one?
one?
I cannot wait. We've been talking about excitability. I'm so super excited right now to introduce to the public United States Representative Karen Bass from California. She is a long-term chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus and architect of sweeping police reform bills for House Democrats. She's from California, obviously. She's 66. Are y'all asleep yet?
No.
I just because I
listen. There are young people and a lot of people who like her, and
I'm not saying I don't like her. I'm falling asleep talking about her.
I want to hear their opinion because we already know how you feel. The people who are reparations supporters like her because she's vocal about it.
Because that's the group of people that's going to help us get Biden elected.
Listen, I'm here to share with you what people's perspectives about Bass. Go ahead, Ed.
No. She's definitely being considered because of her legislative experience and her brilliance. But you also have to consider that the GOP has already started attacking her for some comments she made about Fidel Castro years ago. So that means she's definitely seen as credible. Again, to Keith's point on excitability, you put her on the ticket. I don't know that people are like, oh yeah, man, I'm going out there to work hard for her. But she's not a bad choice. That's the beauty of this discussion today. There's nobody that you pick that automatically craters this campaign. Right. And part of that is how bad 45 is, right? So, I would like to see something different. But you can't really go wrong with her because she's got a lot of members of the House that are supportive of her because they've worked with her and they know she understands how government works. Right. That's the thing we're talking about with experience.
I mean, she's been in the House since 2011. She was the former Speaker of the California State Assembly. I know Nancy Pelosi is a big fan of hers, so that means that she will yield her influence within, to help and get everyone else excited. I just think again, she doesn't. It's kind of interesting. CBC chair is one of those roles that everybody knows who you are, or like nobody knows who
Nobody.
you are, right? It's like, and she's one of those CBC chairs that like nobody knows who she is.
Yeah.
Even within our community. But to Keith's point, I mean, she's done some amazing work on public health, student loan debt, police reform, but people just don't know her. But she can't hurt us. I just don't know what Biden gains. Because California is going to go blue anyway,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know what Biden gains by choosing her, and I think she'd make a fine HUD secretary.
Yeah. Well, and B, keep in mind too that the pick for that Biden's going to make comes down to two things. His personal two things. Are you threatened by the person you select to be the vice president with you, or are you fully comfortable selecting someone that could be the president after you?
And I think Karen Bass brings the former, right? You're like, she's good. She's not flashy.
Right.
She's not excitable. So, she's going to be a good Scottie Pippen. I'm Jordan.
Right.
Like,
right.
She's going to be Scottie Pippen, She's not going to be begging for the ball at the end of the game.
So I do want to dip into that in the 12:30 show, but you all talked about excitability a little bit, a couple of times, and we have a lot of millennials we have some millennials in the group chat, and I know that group is a huge group of folks.
Yes.
Are we talking about real millennials, like the people who 38, or are we talking about young people in their 20s?
We talking about young people. That's a good point. Good point. Gen X, is it Gen Zers who can vote? Gen Zers, and then that millennial group. So that's huge. That's a huge population of people, and their potential voters. These are folks that presumably, at least
they're always potential voters, but
right. I say potential because
now what they do is
they supported Bernie. They were out in big numbers with Bernie,
Obama.
But they if they were able to vote. Yeah. But these are people that weren't able to vote for Obama. So they supported Bernie, but then they didn't show up to vote. Right. But presumably they may, because COVID has a lot of them like, I'm tired of this. So let's assume that they will vote. The excitability level, who amongst the people that we have talked about, because we're going to vote, yeah. Who amongst the people that we've discussed today is going to get that group out and is going to get that group to go to the polls to vote?
Because I'm not, sorry, go ahead, B.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, not being a millennial or a Gen Zer or a Gen Yer, I can't even speak to what would excite that group. But I can tell you as a Gen Xer and an African American that the most important voting bloc right now is the African American voting bloc as a whole. And unfortunately, that does not include the generations that we just referenced, because they don't turn out. And the key number is this: 65%. Okay. Obama, when he won in 2008 and again in 2012, saw African American turnout at 65%. Even going back to 2004, John Kerry was at 60%. For Clinton in 2016, it dropped to 59%, and she lost. Mm-hmm. Okay? So African American turnout is key, which is why the GOP is attacking all of the Black female possible contenders right now. They know this. So I'm sorry, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, y'all have done a great job of making a lot of noise, but we need to see it at the ballot box before people are really going to turn around and make a pick based off of what they're saying. That's just a fact.
Agree with Ed Moore. And it's not as much about generations as it is the African American voting bloc. And if you don't think that's true, we were all in the voting wilderness, right? We didn't know who to vote for. No one could break through. Yep. And then Jim Clyburn, like Moses, was like, "We're voting for Biden."
Sure did.
Boom. The whole way changed.
Overnight.
And Black people were like, "Oh, thank God. We didn't know who to vote for. I didn't know if I was supposed to vote for Julian. I didn't know if I was supposed to vote for Corey. But cool. We vote for Biden." Boom. His whole campaign went a completely different direction because the Black delegation, the mythical Black delegation, got in line. Yeah. Young people, we have this conversation every single election. Even when I was 18 and we were excited about Clinton, we just don't vote. For whatever reason, when people are young, in this generation, they're going to share it on social media. They're going to talk about it, but they're not actually going to go vote. And so I'm with Ed. If we want to win, we need to make Black women happy because they are the most loyal voting bloc. And we got to get Black people excited to come out and vote.
Okay,
and so
who's that
vote for
person?
Keith and Lance Bottoms.
Oh, see, look, since you want to go there, if
she's 50, so she's
okay, so we'll shift. We got about 2 minutes left. But so before we run out of time, for those folks who are watching, we have done a poll for our viewers. So if you go to the Soul Purpose Show, there is a link to a poll that we've listed all these people, and you all select who you all would like to see as Biden's running mate, right? And we're gonna do the results of the poll in the 12:30 show. But since y'all said the millennials and Gen Zers don't vote and they make a lot of noise and they march, but they ain't going to the polls, I hope that changes. Who is going and the focus is African American voting bloc? Who is going to excite Black folks to get out and vote and stand in line in the midst of COVID? Could keep all that in mind. Who's going to do that?
Michelle Obama.
Right. And I don't want people to stand in line. I want people to go vote right now where the polls are open early. I want people to absentee vote. I don't want people standing in line. I think that is an antiquated way of voting. I mean, that you don't need to do that. That's why we have all of these mechanisms so that you don't have to be in line for 7 hours. You don't need to do that. So I want everybody to take advantage of the alternate ways that you can vote. And unlike the president, let me just say this, absentee voting and vote by mail is the same thing.
We're going to close out.
We're going to close out. Listen, we got a lot more to talk about in our 12:30. Join us for the after show. Hopefully you guys can join us. I want to thank Bermetra Liggins, Salter-Liggins, and Ed Narain for joining us on the show, Soul Purpose Show.
Thank y'all.
Outstanding conversation. Y'all be blessed. Be safe.
See y'all next week.